on the Red Shoes, and The Sensual World was a real exploration, celebration of love and sex, but very dark very often, those songs, almost like a claustrophobic feeling. And on this record, on Ariel, as the title suggests, there is a sense of freedom, I think, and space. You feel like you're in a wider, open space making this record, because there wasn't the pressure, because you weren't in the public eye, because you had, in effect, disappeared for a while.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways I got my life back, and it's very important to me as a creative person, as a writer, which is what I think of myself as. We went up to the top of the highest hill and stopped still. To me, I'm somebody who writes, and then I sing and produce in order to make the piece complete. But
writer in the literary way.
Yes, yeah. That's what I started doing when I was a little girl. That's what turned me on. That's the buzz. It's writing a story.
And there have always been literary allusions in your work, right from Wuthering Heights with Bronte, the song The Sensual World. That's about Molly Bloom. It's her soliloquy at the end of Ulysses of James Joyce, isn't it? I know you couldn't actually use Joyce's words, but you had to invent your own version of her story. And of course Ariel itself, it's the name of Sylvia Plath's most famous collection. Is that a nod to her at all, or is that just a coincidence?
I think it's just a coincidence, which there seem to be a lot of, because people mention lots of things, like apparently there's a Mrs. Bartolozzi who Joseph Haydn wrote pieces for, who I was completely unaware of.
Where did her name come from, then, in your mind?
Just thought it was a really interesting name. It is, though, isn't it? It's a great name.
It's a great name.
I tried a few others, but they didn't work as well. You know, Mrs. Brown doesn't quite do it, does it?
It struck me how live this album sounded as well. Live drums all the way through, or frequently used throughout the record. And in a way, I suppose 20 years ago with The Hounds of Love, you were really at the cutting edge of technology, using those Fairlight computers and being able to sample sounds and manipulate sounds for the first time, and you were seen almost as a real pioneer. So in a way, you've stepped back then, and you're relying more on acoustic instruments, or those that respond to the human touch more.
Well, I've always liked the combination of both.
And the juxtaposition.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The fact that you've got these very cold machines against something very warm.
Are there echoes of The Hounds of Love on this album, do you think? I mean, people will see the second disc, A Sky of Honey, which is almost a song cycle and takes you through a passage of time as the sun is going down and we go through night. There's a song called Nocturne, and then we arrive back at the end of the album as the sun is rising again. There's a real passage there, similar in a way to that second side of Hounds of Love, which took you on a journey.
I really enjoyed making Hounds of Love. I liked the two different elements. And I think in a lot of ways I was trying to make just a larger version, a kind of Great Danes of love.
You have returned. I mean, you might not feel like you ever stopped making music and your life has continued. But was it a dilemma, though, to do any promotion at all? Because, of course, the whole promotions industry, the whole music industry is predicated these days on a sense of celebrity.
Well, I think there's a really unhealthy fascination with celebrities. And in a lot of cases, you know, people who, you know, what they're doing is fine, but it's not really something that is so enormously special. I mean, you know, this sort of strange obsession with things that are really rather shallow.
Do you feel like a celebrity yourself?
No, I don't. No.
Are you aware of the influence of your music on subsequent generations? And also the fact that there are so many solo young women singer-songwriters, far more than when you first appeared.
Yes.
Many of whom would cite you as an influence.
Well, I feel very flattered. How nice.
What about your own influences these days? I think there's an interesting mirroring of when you first arrived, 1978, punk rock was, well, I suppose, filtering out, but guitars were to the fore, and here you were, a young girl, pirouetting on top of the pop, singing about a literary heroine in a leotard. Your return...
So was the heroine in the leotard or me? Actually, I wasn't wearing a leotard.
You're not. Some people always think of you as in a leotard. Was that
Yes.
the video?
Well, it was, if I remember correctly, it was a long white dress.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? And then, of course, you became the White Witch.
Yes, well, here we go. Here we go.
But now you've come back, and so much of the music, the guitar music, the young bands, they're harking back to the late 70s. I mean, it's quite interesting that you started off with that going on, and now here you are. Do you listen to what's happening? Do you take any notice of contemporary music?
When I'm making a record, I try not to listen to music because I don't want to be influenced. There was a very strong presence of traditional music when I was growing up, and I think that had a very big influence on me.
Folk music?
Yes.
English folk music in particular?
Yes.
Because there's always been a real English element, I think, to your music, a real pastoral, almost like a celebration of a lost England. That's something that recurs, isn't there?
One thing I've always tried to do is to sing with an English accent, because again, when, maybe not so much now, but when I first was making records, it always used to surprise me how so many English people were singing with American accents, and I could never really understand why people were doing this.
But the stuff that you were listening to as a girl, how did that filter into those first... I mean, for instance, it said that you wrote Man with a Child in His Eyes at 13. Did it come easily? I mean, it seems
Yes.
incredible to me now that a girl of 13 could write that song.
Well, the hardest bit for me was the piano part. I used to have to rehearse like crazy to get those because I'm not really a very good piano player. He's very understanding. He's so aware of all my situations.
Do you ever go back and listen to the earlier records?
No.
None of them? When was the last time you heard A Kick Inside?
I can't remember.
I mean, would you be able to play them again?
No, I mean, I tend to sort of dump them onto tape and leave them. Quite often I can't even remember what key the songs are in.
So you've been working on this record on Ariel for 6 years, and you said earlier it was almost like a process of distillation, and you have to let it sit there in the vat and ferment and change, and finally you hand it over to the public. Is that is there a sense of relief when you do that, or reluctance?
Oh, I was so relieved when I finished this record. I thought I was never going to get it finished. There were so many times I thought that I was just not going to have the energy to just see it through. It was really hard work. I always tend to try and do things that are a bit over-ambitious, really.
How did you know when it was finished? Did somebody have to come in the room and say, stop now?
No, it was when I knew that, I couldn't go on any longer or it would have killed me. I was so fed up with it, so fed up with listening to the thing.
I know you would argue that you haven't been away, you've just been getting on with your life, but people will say Kate Bush has returned. Is it good to be back?
Well, it's very nice speaking to you, John.
Kate Bush, thank you very much.
Thank you.